Normally my desk would be pretty clear at the start of a video, but today... So what's going on? Well, you remember a while ago I built this 6532 tester. I have since extended it and improved it slightly. It's got ESD protection on it and so on. I've also created a 6526 version for the regular Commodore 64 CIA and a 6522 version. In the process of testing it and figuring out what was going on, you can see I've got little chips hanging off the side. My C64 died and it black screens, and the dead test gives one flash. I've tried replacing all the RAM chips. I've done tests on all the support chips. They are all fine. They're all socketed. I've put new ones in. It still gives one flash. I'm not sure what's going on. So today what we're going to do is look at the Commodore 64 and see if we can get them working again. So let's do it. Moving over to the Commodore 64. Now, you can see basically everything in here is as normal. All the chips have been socketed. Many of these are actually new. Most of the RAM chips are actually new. And it gives us a black screen. Let me demonstrate. Power on. There you go, black screen. Power it off. Now I've got my little box of Magic C64 test harness. So let us find in here. Right, this is a 2-in-1 dead test and diagnostic. We'll plug in the dead test. Don't want to short anything out. And this is what we get. Now that's interesting. We had 3 flashes to start with and then 1 flash. And what I've seen before is just the 1 flash. But that supposedly says it's one of the memory chips. I think we can be more specific than that. And the reason I think we can be more specific than that is because there is a new kid on the block and it's called DESTEST Max. And we can build this up, and this is basically a new dead test cartridge, and it gives a lot more diagnostic information. So let's build one of these up and give it a try. If you're designing electronics, you'll know that there is only so far you can go with a prototype board, and eventually you're going to want to go to a full-blown PCB, something like that. And our sponsor PCBWay makes printed circuit boards. All you need to do is upload your Gerber files and select the color, the number that you want, various other things like the board thickness, and off you go. It will be delivered within about a week. They don't just do PCBs, they do 3D printing, they do sheet metal work, they do CNC machining, and they do shared projects where somebody else has built and designed something and you can get the boards. These prototype boards are actually shared projects from PCBWay. Check them out, www.pcbway.com. To make up this DESTest cartridge, I am going to use a Versa 64 cart by BWAC. Other cartridges are available, but it's just a matter of sticking a socket on here setting a few jumper links, adding a switch, I've got a switch, and putting an EEPROM in. This cartridge board is designed so that you can have one of 8 cartridges and all sorts of fancy, funky things going on. You can have multiple things, you can have dip switches and all sorts, but for this I just want it to be a simple DESTest cartridge. So it's going to have one job and that's it. Simple enough. So I've got some wire to make some jumpers from. I've got a socket, got a soldering iron and some solder. This is the thin stuff. Oh, we do need one other thing, and that is a capacitor. Just a standard 100 nanofarad job. So let's pull that out. There we go. Now let's put this in. And then we just need to solder 28 pins. There we go, they're all soldered. Some of them look like they don't have very much solder on them. These are pre-bent for a wider set of holes than this is. There we go. Okay, actually I can use this for the jumper. We only need to jumper this switch pin here with a wire link. So I think that ought to be about right. Okay, there we go. Now, for these, we need to set the addresses for 13, 14 and 15 high or low. It doesn't really matter because I've actually programmed all 8 slots on this ROM. It's a 64K ROM and we only have 8K of code. So there's 8 copies of the same ROM. It really doesn't matter what that's set to as long as it's set to something. So we can set these jumpers here to make it low or these jumpers here to make it high. And there's the option there for pull-up resistors if we are after that. I don't think we are, so I'm going to set all 3 of these low. Okay, so that should be it. And then if we put the ROM in, now I'll put a link to the DESTest website in the description, so if you want to make one of these yourself then you can. So these 3 addresses are set, that is set, the EEPROM is there. We should be good to give this a try. Oh, one thing, I forgot to put the reset switch on, so let's do that. Now, we've got a choice of sizes. Do we want a tall one or a short one? So I think I'm going to go for a 12mm. 12mm one, which is quite a tall one. So it goes in there like that. Okay, I'll just clean that bottom off and then we will be ready to go. The one last thing I did was stick the label on top. You didn't really need to see me do that. Let's plug it in. Okay, there we go. So let's try the DESTest. Right. Mains on, power on. We get a white screen. Huh. That's not encouraging. Did I make the cartridge wrong? I will have to check it. Actually, I know what I can do in lieu of that. Let's just take the ROM out of this and plug the DESTest into this. It's a WinBond, same as I'm using. So it should just be a straight swap. Then I can just figure out what I did wrong on that later. Ah, that's better. Crap, a dreaded ROM checksum mismatch. Well, that's not encouraging, is it? Okay, so I cocked up wiring this up. What I didn't do is connect that jumper and that jumper. And now I've done that. So putting the DESTest back into this rather than into this, we'll plug this in, switch it on, and we will almost certainly see the same result. So mains is on. There we go. Oh no, grey border, fail testing 0 page, blue border. Okay, so failed testing 0 page, good green or bad red. Well, everything's red except for bit 1. That's interesting. I guess that's the address it was testing or something, maybe. So I think we can dispense with the case, because we're going to be poking around. Crump, crump, crump. Let's unplug that for the time being. All the memories are bad and the border is blue. Da 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 dee 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 dee. Does that mean it's the PLA? PLA is warm. I've got a spare PLA somewhere. I could easily try that. And we can do bit tests on the RAM. Gonna try that. Back in a sec. Okay, I've swapped the PLA out for a GAL PLA. So let's see what that does. That does exactly the same, but all the bits are red. All the bits are red. Remember, we had one green bit before, but now we've only got red bits. That's interesting. But that suggests maybe the PLA isn't the problem. Let's turn that off. Let's take the SID out, because we don't actually need the SID in there, and we don't really want it to get damaged. The ROMs are not relevant, I mean, unless they're actually shorting. I've tried it without the ROMs in, and it gives us exactly the same result. The ROMs are not actually needed for the DESTest to work. Just the PLA, the CPU, and the VIC. Let's press the reset button and see what that does. That's only 2 now. Okay, it's forcing it through to the other tests. Okay, so it's running through the tests, and that appears to be fine. It's not coming up with any... Yeah, that's because it's going through the screen RAM. There we go. It's not coming up with any bit errors, which is interesting because when we power it down and do the startup test, the initial power up test, and now it's running. I think it's a heat related issue in that case. Once something gets warm, it starts up okay. Question is, what? It's back to this because I've put the old PLA back. Now, I'm wondering, because this Gal PLA has got these really crappy big chunky pin headers on it. I didn't build this, by the way, this is how it came. So I am thinking that they have now made this a loose connection, and basically we can't go back to that PLA. So I think we have to take that out and consign it to the parts bin. So it's going to live in there. Turn that back on. Haha. I didn't have my microphone on. I hope you heard what I said. It might be rather faint. So basically, because that had the wrong kind of pins, it had chunky pins on it, it stretched the socket. But I'll bet if I leave this on for a while, it will start working. So turn it off. Turn it on. There we go. So something has warmed up and now it works. I'd put the bloody microphone down again, didn't I? So something has warmed up and now it works. Answers on a postcard, please. The machine's been off since yesterday, so let's just see if it's doing the same thing. Right, the switch is off. That is off. Plug that in. I don't leave the cable plugged in overnight just in case, because you never know. Right, here we go. Black screen as we expect. Let's plug the DESTest in. Here we go again. And we are back to the dreaded ROM checksum mismatch. Now the manual suggests that it's an addressing error. We do know that we have at other times gone through the entire DESTest memory check. We haven't got as far as successfully running the diagnostic. We have managed to get some way through the diagnostic, but we've also got corruption and other problems. Now, it has been suggested that the CPU could be the cause of all our strife. I don't have a spare. It's also been suggested that the ROMs could be a problem. I'm not convinced, but I have got some 24 to 28 pin adapters. Unfortunately, I'm down to that number of pins, so I can't build those up at the moment. I have got some on order, but they won't be here until after Christmas. So what we can do, and I think if I turn it off and turn it on again, now once it's warmed up a little bit, it's coming to this, and you see all the bits are red. All the bits are red and the border is blue. If I hit the reset button, exactly the same thing. Now yesterday it was going through to the other tests, but maybe if we leave it powered for a while longer, it will start doing that again. Now we've got a few green ones. These are the address lines that are supposedly faulty. So I think that could be a candidate, certainly of all the big chips, because we've got a different PLA in there. The VIC is obviously working, otherwise we wouldn't get anything on the screen at all. So what I'm going to do is remember not to switch the camera off when you're switching off the power supply, because I lost a load of footage with that last time. So what I'm going to do, put that to one side for the moment, because we are short on space, is take my 64C, open it up, and let's pull the CPU out. Sorry you didn't see that, because after all that talking the camera wasn't on. Right, so what I'm going to do is take the CPU out of this. I'll stick my strappy on. So you take that CPU out. Now I'm going to put that in here. This is my only other 6510. So I cannot kill it. Right, that is in there. Now we'll plug this in and see if it runs, because that will be very diagnostic. Okay, here we go. Mains on, power on. Black screen. What do you know? So I'm going to put the DESTest in here. That's a different error. Unexpected break. We've got those. But there we go. Hit reset and we've got a bunch of data errors and a bunch of address errors. So let's take our Breadbin, stick the bracelet back on, and put this in here. Right, will it power up without the DESTest in? Let's see. 3, 2, 1. Well, if you don't plug the cable in, it's not going to do anything. 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's blue with a blank screen. So that could imply that BASIC is faulty, or the kernel is faulty. No, if the kernel was faulty, it wouldn't get the blue screen. So let's put the DESTest in. But it could imply that BASIC is faulty. and that's immediately going through. That is a good sign. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. Now I'm going to take this out and put in the diagnostic. And let's see what we get. Now there's no test harness plugged in, but let's see what we see. Okay, so it says the bad chips are U9, U10, U12, U22 and U24. Those are 4164s, which is interesting. So 9, 10, 11 is okay, 12, 24, 23, 22. So it's saying that 5 out of 8 are bad, but we can run the chip tester and confirm that. Let's do that. So it might be hard to see the LEDs on this. I've taken the first chip out, put it in to the tester. Zoom in. So let's press the button. This is one that the diagnostic said was okay, and it's passed. So I'll leave it out for the time being. Let's take the next one. Stick that in. This is one that it said failed. And that's passed. Okay, I'll go through the rest of them off camera and report the results. It could entirely be that it is the buffery chips here that are failing rather than the actual RAM. So we will see. The memory's all been checked and proved to be okay, at least according to this, and I've put it all back. So let's just see if it's made any difference. I really suspect it probably hasn't. Okay, here we go. Diagnostic cartridge is plugged in. Yeah, it's still showing 4 bad now out of 5. So the next thing to check is going to be these support chips. Not sure why that character is wrong, or yeah. We won't mention that. Let's just take the basic ROM out of curiosity and see if that makes a difference. Ah, no, we get 2 bad chips. Okay, we continue. I've plugged the basic ROM back in. Let's just give it a quick try and see what it does. Okay, power on the mains. Out of memory error in 0. And a lot of garbage. But we had a cursor. Interesting. Sad to say, I think I'm about to call it on this. It's gone from a black screen to a blue screen, which I'm not sure it's an improvement, but it is different. I've done a lot of stuff to this both on camera and off camera. So the 6510 was definitely dead, or at least not functioning properly. And this has been replaced out of my 64C. I don't have a spare 6510, so currently my 64C has no CPU in it. I've replaced the PLA, and in the process that has widened the socket so that that is now stuck in there and I can't really put the old one back. SID seems to be fine. The VIC2 seems to be fine. The CIAs seem to be fine. I have taken the ROMs out and read them and they appear to read fine. I've built replacement ROMs and I've put those in and that does not make a difference. The symptom, blue screen symptom, is sometimes associated with a dead basic ROM, and I've replaced the basic ROM and that is definitely not the case, or at least it doesn't behave any better with that than it does with that. I have replaced all the RAM, I've tested all the RAM, I've swapped the RAM out with the RAM from one of my Plus 4s, which I know definitely works. I found this 7406 to be faulty in the Mini Pro, and so I replaced that. That did not make a difference. The symptom as it applies, we can run the DESTest test, and I'll run these quickly so that you can see it. Let's just set this camera. Right, so turn this off. DESTest. Run this. So this runs through fine. We'll just run it through once. So there we go, that runs through fine. Let's turn that off. The regular DESTest, this is a double-headed cartridge. If we run that, that's interesting. Usually that flashes, but this is actually running now. Okay. So this is actually the very first time that this has actually run all the way through, or at least as far as this. Normally it just sits on a black screen that flashes. So I'm looking at it surprised. and then it goes through again. So that's a new one, but if we go through the diagnostic test, which is the back of this same cartridge, that now gives us bad RAM and it gives us iffy characters on the screen. These bad RAM chips are different pretty much every time that I run the test. And of course it stops at that point, so it's not going to do it any further. That one seems to have just stopped. And there we've got 5 bad RAM chips. And of course more text errors. Now I've tried a different character ROM. I've replaced all of these support logic chips and tested them. They all test perfectly fine. PLA, fine. ROMs, as far as I can tell, fine. 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 So I'm sort of at a loss. Maybe these capacitors need replacing, I don't know. They don't look bad on the face of it. But, that's another error that we've seen. So, at the best, it's intermittent. At the worst, it's just a black screen. Sometimes it does actually still black screen. It has never come up with a proper basic prompt. I mean, it's got the flashing cursor there, but it's never come up with the thingy bytes free message. So maybe I will send it to one of my YouTube compadres to have a look at. I don't know. If I do and there's a result, we will let you know. Otherwise, if you have a brilliant idea of what the problem is, please let me know in the comments. I've checked the switch, I've bypassed it, I've reflowed pretty much every solder joint on it. Anyhow, thank you for watching. Please check out my Patreon, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. See ya. Bye.